Most people think fixing a life takes years. Therapy, self-help books, long painful seasons of trial and error. But what if you could actually shift your entire trajectory in just 7 days? Not through some magic trick or overnight miracle, but through a quiet, intentional rewiring of how you see yourself, your world, and your place inside it. This is not about productivity hacks. This is not about waking up at 5 in the morning and drinking green juice. This is about something deeper, a psychological reset, a week-long conversation between who you have been and who you are ready to become. See, most people try to change their lives from the outside in. New job, new city, new relationship, and those things can help. But they are surface-level adjustments to a structure that was built long ago. The real transformation, the kind that actually lasts, happens from the inside out. It happens when you stop rearranging the furniture and start examining the foundation. And that is exactly what this week is designed to do. 7 days, 7 layers, each one peeling back something you have been carrying without knowing it. Think of your life right now as a house. You have been living in it for years. And over time, without really noticing, the rooms filled up. Old beliefs piled in corners. Habits you never chose stacked themselves against the walls. Noise from the outside world crept in through every window. And now, when you walk through the hallways of your own mind, it feels cluttered, crowded, hard to breathe. This week is about opening every door, letting the air in, and deciding, room by room, what stays and what finally gets to leave. So let us begin with the hardest day, the one most people skip. Day 1 is about confronting the ghost. Every person carries a version of themselves they have been avoiding. Not the version the world sees, and not the version they perform on social media. The real one, the one who sits quietly in the background, holding all the truths that are too uncomfortable to speak out loud. Day 1 asks you to sit with that version of yourself. No distractions, no phone. Just a journal, a pen, and the kind of honesty that most people spend their entire lives running from. Psychologists call this radical self-honesty. It is the practice of surfacing the parts of yourself that are easy to ignore, the beliefs you have been carrying since childhood, the patterns you repeat without understanding why, the quiet fears that shape your decisions more than you realize. And here is the neuroscience behind why this matters. Your brain is not a fixed thing. It is not a machine that was built once and never changes. Research published as recently as 2025 confirms what scientists have been discovering for decades. Your brain is plastic. It rewires itself constantly based on what you pay attention to, what you repeat, and what you choose to confront. This ability, called neuroplasticity, means that the simple act of writing down your thoughts, of naming your patterns out loud, begins to physically reshape the neural pathways in your brain. A systematic review on journaling and mental health found that expressive writing, the kind where you write openly and without judgment, reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression in measurable ways. Brain scans showed that people who wrote about their emotions gained better control over those emotions than people who wrote about neutral topics. So on day 1, you are not just reflecting. You are literally remodeling the architecture of your mind. Sit down. Write every thought you have been avoiding. Write the things you are afraid of. Write the habits you know are hurting you. Write the truth about where you are, not where you wish you were. This is not about self-punishment. This is about self-clarity. You cannot rebuild a house if you refuse to look at the blueprints. And here is the thing about this kind of honesty. It does not destroy you. It does the opposite. It releases you, because the things you have been avoiding are using up enormous amounts of mental energy just by sitting there, unnamed and unexamined. Psychologists describe this as cognitive load. Your brain is constantly managing the weight of unprocessed thoughts, unspoken truths, and unresolved emotions. When you finally put them on paper, you are not adding burden. You are releasing it. You are telling your nervous system, I see this now. I do not have to carry it silently anymore. That is the gift of day one. Not answers, just awareness. And awareness, it turns out, is the foundation everything else is built on. Day two is about the physical anchor. There is an old saying that your environment is a mirror of your mind. And as poetic as that sounds, science backs it up. Researchers at Princeton University found that visual clutter competes with your brain for attention. It overwhelms your ability to focus and process information. Other studies found that people living in cluttered spaces had higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, throughout the day. Their bodies were in a constant low-grade state of fight or flight, not because of any real danger, but because of the mess around them. And here is what makes this so powerful for a reset. When you clean and organize your physical space, you are sending a signal to your brain that says, I am taking control. You are not just tidying a room. You are performing an act of psychological reclamation. Think of it like this. If your mind has been a cluttered room for months or even years, the mess outside of you has been reinforcing the mess inside of you. They feed each other. So, on day two, you break that cycle. Clean one area of your living space. Not the whole house, just one meaningful space. Your desk, your bedroom, the corner of the room where things have been piling up. Be intentional about it. As you remove the physical clutter, pay attention to how your mind responds. You might notice something subtle but real, a slight lifting, a quiet sense of order returning. That is your brain recognizing that the external chaos is no longer confirming the internal chaos. You are giving yourself permission to exist in a space that supports clarity instead of confusion. Day three is the dopamine fast. And before you roll your eyes, hear this out. The term dopamine fast gets thrown around a lot, and honestly, a lot of what you hear about it is oversimplified. Your brain is not a jar that you can empty and refill. Dopamine is not some toxic chemical you need to flush out. It is a neurotransmitter that plays a role in motivation, reward, and learning. But here is the problem. Modern life has hijacked your dopamine system. Every notification on your phone, every scroll through social media, every quick hit of entertainment is training your brain to crave constant stimulation. Research published in public health journals in 2025 described dopamine scrolling as a distinct behavioral pattern, where small doses of dopamine are released with each swipe, creating a tolerance effect similar to what you see in addictive behaviors. Your brain becomes so used to constant stimulation that simple, quiet, meaningful activities stop feeling rewarding. That is why you can sit in a beautiful park and still feel the urge to check your phone. The fast is not about punishing yourself. It is about remembering what silence sounds like. On day three, step away from the screens. Not forever, just for one day. No social media, no mindless scrolling, no autoplay videos. Instead, go for a walk, sit with a book. Stare out a window and let your mind wander. This might sound simple, but for most people, it will feel deeply uncomfortable. That discomfort is information. It is telling you how dependent your nervous system has become on external stimulation. And the beautiful thing about the brain is that it can recalibrate. Studies show that reducing high stimulation inputs even briefly, can help restore sensitivity to natural rewards. You start noticing things again. The way light moves through a room, the taste of a meal you actually sat down to eat, the sound of your own thoughts when they are not competing with 1,000 digital voices. You might even feel a strange kind of grief. Grief for how long you went without noticing the world right in front of you. That grief is healthy. It means your sensitivity is coming back online. It means your brain is remembering that not every moment needs to be filled with input. That boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is actually the doorway to creativity, to introspection, to the kind of deep thinking that only happens when the noise stops. Neuroscientists have found that when you reduce external stimulation, your brain activates what is called the default mode network. This is the part of your brain responsible for self-reflection, imagination, and connecting seemingly unrelated ideas. It is the part of you that daydreams, that wonders, that creates. And it gets completely drowned out when you are scrolling. Day 3 gives that part of you permission to wake up again. Day 4 is about rewriting the narrative. Every person walks around with a story playing in the background of their mind. And most of the time, they did not write it. It was written for them. By parents, by teachers, by painful experiences, by offhand comments someone made 15 years ago that somehow became gospel truth. Psychologists who study narrative identity have found that the stories we tell ourselves about who we are directly shape our well-being, our decisions, and our sense of possibility. If the story says I always fail, then your brain will look for evidence to confirm that story. If the story says I'm not the kind of person who deserves good things, your behavior will quietly arrange itself to prove that narrative true. This is where day 4 becomes a turning point. You are going to meet your inner critic, and instead of fighting it or pretending it does not exist, you are going to do something radical. You are going to name it. Narrative therapists use a technique called externalization. Instead of saying I am anxious, you say the anxiety showed up today. Instead of I am a failure, you say the failure story is playing again. This small shift creates psychological distance between you and the pattern. It stops being your identity and starts being something you can observe, question, and eventually rewrite. Grab your journal again. Write down the dominant story your mind has been telling you. Then, ask yourself, where did this story come from? Is it actually true? And what would a different story look like? You do not have to believe the new story immediately. That is not the point. The point is to prove to your brain that the old story is not the only option, that there are plot holes in the narrative you have been living by, and those plot holes are where the light gets in. Consider a composite example based on observed patterns. Imagine someone who grew up being told they were too sensitive. Over decades, that label calcified into a belief. They learned to suppress their emotions, to perform toughness, to dismiss their own inner life as weakness. But the truth was, their sensitivity was never a flaw. It was a form of intelligence, an ability to read rooms, to feel what others feel, to notice subtleties that most people miss entirely. The old narrative said sensitivity equals weakness. The new narrative says sensitivity equals depth. Same trait, completely different story. And when you change the story, you change the way you move through the world. You stop apologizing for the very thing that makes you extraordinary. That is the power of day 4. It is not about pretending the past did not happen. It is about refusing to let the past be the only author of your future. Day 5 is about relationship geometry. Here is something most people do not think about. Your social circle is not just a list of names in your phone. It is a living, breathing system that directly impacts your mental and physical health. A 2025 paper by psychologist Robin Dunbar, one of the leading researchers on social networks, found that our mental and physical well-being is best predicted by the number and quality of our close relationships. Not our total number of friends, not our follower count. The data pointed to a specific number, about 5. 5 close, meaningful connections are the sweet spot for human flourishing. Dunbar describes our social world in layers. The innermost layer, about 5 people, is your support group. These are the people you would call at 2 in the morning. The next layer, about 10 to 15 people, is your empathy group. You talk to them regularly and would miss them if they disappeared. Beyond that, the connections become looser and less emotionally significant. So on day 5, you are going to do something quietly powerful. You are going to map your social world. Write down the people you spend the most time with. Then honestly ask yourself, does this person add depth to my life, or do they add noise? This is not about cutting people off cruelly or becoming some kind of hermit. It is about recognizing that your energy is finite. A 2025 study on energy allocation in personal networks found that how people distribute their social energy across relationships varies dramatically, and that those who concentrated more energy on their closest ties reported greater well-being. You might realize that you have been pouring energy into relationships that drain you while neglecting the handful of people who actually see you. Day 5 is about correcting that imbalance. It is about quality, not quantity. About choosing the people who make you feel more like yourself, not less. Send a message to someone you have been meaning to reach out to. Have a real conversation, not a text thread, a conversation. Sit across from someone and let the silences be comfortable. Let the words be honest. And gently begin creating space from the connections that consistently leave you feeling smaller. You do not owe anyone access to your energy simply because they have always had it. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks that you get to control. Day 6 is the philosophy of action. And this is where everything changes. Because here is the truth that most self-help content will never tell you. Thinking about change is not the same as changing. There is a well-documented phenomenon in psychology called the intention-behavior gap. It is the space between what you plan to do and what you actually do. Research shows that even strong, sincere intentions only lead to a small to medium change in actual behavior. You can want to change with every fiber of your being and still find yourself repeating the same patterns. So what closes the gap? Action, but not just any action. Specific, planned, situation-linked action. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer developed a concept called implementation intentions. Instead of saying, I will exercise more, you say, when I finish my morning coffee, I will put on my shoes and walk for 20 minutes. Instead of, I will be more present, you say, when I sit down for dinner, I will put my phone in the other room. This is not about willpower. It is about designing your environment and your routines so that the desired behavior becomes almost automatic. A meta-analysis of over 8,000 participants found that implementation intentions had a medium to large effect on goal attainment. That is significant. It means that the simple act of deciding when, where, and how you will act nearly doubles your chances of actually doing it. So on day 6, pick one thing from this week, one insight, one realization, one change that matters most to you, and turn it into an if-then plan. Write it down, put it where you will see it, and then do it. Not tomorrow, today, because the bridge between thinking and being is built one small, deliberate action at a time. And now, day 7. Integration. This is the day most people miss. They do the work for 6 days and then expect the transformation to just stick on its own. But that is not how the brain works. Neuroplasticity is not a light switch. It is more like a path through a forest. The first time you walk a new path, it is overgrown and difficult. The second time, it is slightly easier. The 10th time, it starts to feel natural. But if you stop walking it, the forest grows back. Day 7 is about building the bridge between this week and the rest of your life. It is about taking everything you have uncovered, every truth, every cleared space, every reconnected relationship, every named pattern, and weaving it into a sustainable rhythm. Not a rigid schedule, not a punishing routine, a rhythm. Something that breathes with you instead of suffocating you. Start by going back to your journal from day 1. Read what you wrote. Notice how different it feels to read those words now compared to when you wrote them. That distance, that shift in perspective, is evidence that something has changed inside you. Then write 1 page about who you are becoming. Not who you want to be someday far in the future. Who you are becoming right now, based on the choices you made this week. Make it vivid. Make it specific. Research on mental contrasting, a technique where you imagine a desired future while honestly acknowledging the obstacles in your way, shows that this approach is far more effective than simple positive thinking. People who only fantasize about positive outcomes actually become less motivated over time. But people who pair their vision with a clear-eyed look at reality, who say, I want this and here is what stands in my way, those people take action. So on day 7, your task is this. Write your vision and your obstacles side by side. Then create one if-then plan for each obstacle. Make it specific, make it real, and then close the journal and go live the first hour of your new life. Not the whole life, just the first hour. Because that is all you ever need to do. Live the next hour as the person you are becoming. And then do it again, and again, until one day you realize you are no longer becoming that person. You are that person, and you have been for a while. Here is what I want you to understand. This week was never about fixing yourself, because you were never broken. You were buried under other people's expectations, buried under habits that were never yours to begin with, buried under a culture that tells you to move faster, scroll longer, and feel less. This week was about excavation, digging down to the version of you that has been waiting patiently underneath all that noise. And the beautiful part is that this version of you did not show up because of some external event. It showed up because you made a choice. You chose honesty over comfort on day 1. You chose clarity over chaos on day 2. You chose stillness over stimulation on day 3. You chose a new story over an old wound on day 4. You chose depth over noise on day 5. You chose action over intention on day 6. And today, on day 7, you chose to keep going. You are part of something larger than you realize. Every person who has ever paused long enough to question the life they were living, every person who has ever sat alone with a journal and dared to write the truth, every person who has ever looked at the clutter of their world and said, this is not who I am anymore. They are all part of the same quiet revolution. A revolution of people who decided that depth matters more than speed. That inner peace is not a luxury. That transformation does not have to be loud to be real. You are one of those people now. And if this resonated with you, if something in these words met something in your chest that has been waiting to be named, then I would love for you to stick around. Subscribe to this channel for more, quiet reflections like this one. Leave a comment below and tell me which day hit you the hardest. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for another person is to remind them that change does not take years. Sometimes it just takes one honest week. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.